name is Dave Cranage, Operation Field Sales Engineer for Sage X3. Today we're going to take some time to review the procure-to-pay overview demonstration. To get started, let me go ahead and log into X3 as my ERP US user. So here we go. So as we've talked about through the other demos, this brings me to my home screen. Very powerful tool of X3 is the ability for us to create visual process maps. X3, as everybody knows from attending the different Sage U classes and from hearing some of the other demonstrations, is a centralized ERP solution. And I think from a procure-to-pay perspective, it's important to understand that utilizing a centralized system like X3 provides greater control over the governance and compliance of the procurement process. And it provides easy, as we've talked about in the past, role-based access to data for improved traceability and decision-making, right? It's a single source of data. It's a single warehouse of data. And we're not utilizing disparate systems, Excel spreadsheets, pink slips to bring to the purchasing person, QuickBooks, et cetera, right? Online solutions and so on. Another key aspect that I just want to point out before we dive into the procure-to-pay is inside of X3, within some of the standard visual process maps, we've created a supply chain, or a procurement, if you will, based visual process map. And so today we're going to be touching on an overview, but I want you guys to have some visibility to this. This gives us a greater level of control over that procurement process from from container management and managing shipments from across the ocean to purchase contracts, RFQs, and so forth, even back-to-back orders. And I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. We're not going to be touching on all this today, but the system is extremely comprehensive when it comes to managing the procurement process. So that's just going to enhance what we're talking about today. The other thing that I really would like to point out, I'm going to jump down to my landing pages as we have in the past. And you'll notice here, let me go ahead and pop that out to a new tab. You notice here that my procurement or purchasing dashboard, purchasing manager dashboard, whatever you might want to refer to this as, is a very powerful tool for us to evaluate the purchasing process, evaluate our vendors, evaluate how we utilize our procurement dollars and so forth. And again, this is baked into the system when you get X3 and our business intelligence tools. And again, it's all driven by the key indicators. Last year wasn't a great indicator of how things should go in the normal world from a procurement perspective for a lot of companies. So if we jump back to, say, 2019, maybe we want to get back and look at how things operated in 2019, which is a little bit more normal. We're slicing that data. We can do it by site. So if I needed to dive into specifically a North American site today, we're going to be using our NA21 site like we have in the past. So as you can see, dynamically, the information is changing in the background. And I think it's important to remember when you go to present around this pay-to-procure process that there's a lot of power here, because enhanced visibility to real-time spend real-time spend analytics via dashboards and KPIs, similar to what we're looking at here, it really improves business intelligence and awareness of the potential cost-saving opportunities. And as we go through today, you're going to see that there's a lot of different ways that we can save and reduce costs through procurement. And a tool like SD&A or SEI, but basically business intelligence tools, brings that raw data, mines it out, and presents it in real-time benchmarks and KPIs so that people that are involved in that procurement process see the data that they need to make intelligent decisions. Let's bounce back here and drop down. I don't want to forget, I'm just going to quickly touch on my inquiries. These are a set of inquiries that have been set up within the system. Again, I've used all standard seeded inquiries here, but the key point I want to make right now is that with inquiries, this is a quick way to sort, filter, get data, dive into the data. These are hyperlinks to take me right into the business documents, and also the ability to dive that data out or push that data out to Excel and utilize it there if that's helpful. So enhancing what we can do with the dashboards. We also have exports from SDNA or from the business intelligence tools like SDNA and SEI, but we also can just mine some raw data for our own purposes quickly, and if we need to, push that out to Excel. And then lastly, before we get right to the demonstration itself, we talked about some of the other visual process maps. This one I built for procure-to-pay. Key thing to understand here is that we still have access to information, we have access to inquiries, and we have access to reporting, as well as signature management, which we'll talk about, aka approvals of different processes within the system. Those are vital as sort of the common data and the background that drive the key aspects of the procure-to-pay process. So streamlining manual tasks that, a perfect example of that is a purchase request is typically done manually. I've even more manually in that I walk into someone's office and say, hey, Joe, I need some of X. But sometimes I'm required to write that down on a slip and drop it in a box or something. Well, those streamlining manual tasks like that and going paperless, removing the pink slip reduces the processing time, right? I don't have to regurgitate and re-enter that information, reducing mistakes, and also the costs that are inherent in the traditional procure-to-pay process. So again, this is all about streamlining and automating the procurement process. We're shooting for improved efficiencies and connectivity through the organization to save us money. We're not necessarily looking to save the vendors money or improve our time to pay them because we want to hold on to our cash, but we certainly will improve our relationship with them, and we'll have greater insight into things that we buy, how quickly we buy them or need them, how often we run out of things, and so forth. The more insight we have into that, the better we are for setting up contracts, the better we are for communicating and working with our vendors, and so on and so forth. So you'll see that the relationship with vendors will improve, and that will have a ripple effect with customers because we won't have log jams in production due to lack of raw materials or things of that nature. So our customers will be happy, quality will be better, on-time delivery will be better, and so forth. So what I want to do now is dive into the visual process map, the business processes that we define as procure-to-pay. And I think an important place to start is really understanding what procure-to-pay is. And I think it's best described as an integrated system, right? The procure-to-pay process is an integrated system that fully automates the goods and services purchasing process for a business. The system earned its name because it handles all aspects of acquisition, from the purchase of goods to the payment of the vendor. Procure-to-pay is a complete purchase system for business, from the purchase of goods to vendor payment, an automated process that saves costs and reduces risk, like we were just talking about. And again, this is a key part of what I was trying to say. It's not designed to speed up vendor payment because this is not in the interest of us, right? We want to hold on to our cash as long as possible. And as I said there a second ago, improving efficiency, gaining financial control, and making sure that everybody's marching to the same beat is all critical to that procurement process. So we're really going from what is a very off the cuff or shoot from the hip traditional business process, and we're really bringing it into a more organized, efficient, and defined process. So to start it off, let's dive into that pink slip, as I referred to it, the purchase request. A purchase request, as the name implies, is simply used to manage purchase requirements. So it's in X3, it's a electronic process. So as a person who might, and I could be anybody from the lady up front who's taking phone calls and managing the copier paper, to the guy who's out in the back warehouse and he's managing the levels and the raw materials and inventory that we have. So in this particular case, I'm going to say I want a new request, and when I come down, you'll notice right away it's very succinct and concise screen. I need what's my product, I have the ability to check RFQs. I have the ability to check pending orders that might be out there. But in my particular case, I know I'm going to need some of this raw 316, and that's packaging for our bean dip that we've been using all along. Requirements to consider as we run MRP, like we've talked about in other demonstrations. There are going to be suggestions that are made. So as I go through the process of sitting down to do a requirement, I want to have greater visibility, right? I want to be able to see who's out there. Has anybody else asked for this? Has it been requested by the system that we order some more, and so on? So in this particular case, I'm just going to click out of there because I know I'm going to do this all from scratch. I need this material. Whoops, sorry. I need this material 10 days from now, so a simple plus 10, and I need 115 of the cartons. And I hop over to my supplier field. Yes, there's a default supplier there, but again, using my action card, I actually have visibility into my product supplier product site selection. And this is important because these are the products these are the vendors that we use or suppliers that we use to purchase this raw material or item when we go to buy it. And so here you can see we have two. One of them, if you look over here, let me just drag the column over so we see them back to back. Priority, vendor priority, and quality rank priority, right? So we have visibility to some of that information. We can sort, we can filter, but the key thing here is I'm now aware of this. All the way at the time of the requisition, I have visibility to who do we like to buy this from and so forth. So I may have a preference. That doesn't mean that the purchasing person in the end has to use that. But again, I have some visibility into that, and the company can control some of that information depending on how many vendors we have and so on and so forth. So it's calculated out our order date, right, based on the 10 days out that we need. So if I scroll out here a little bit, I'm sorry, today is the date that we ordered it. And then let's go ahead and create that. You'll notice that we do not have a signature signed yet. We also have not printed out the purchase request. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now, you say, do I have to print it out, Dave? And the answer is no, absolutely not. Many of the organizations are going to look for that more automated aspect to purchase requests, to purchase orders and approval process and all that. But I did want to just quickly bring it up to the screen for you guys. So a couple things I did want to point out. We in past demos, we pointed out that the common tables have a lot of notes and comments and so forth, text lines and so forth. So the relatedness associated with the product, the vendor, and so forth, you can see it's being taken advantage of, and we're actually pulling in that text as far as from the table itself, from the product master table, the supplier line, we had a text line in there. And then the other thing I wanted to point out is if we go to signature history, again, given that I have access to this via my permissions, I have the ability to see what's kind of been what's transpired so far. So I can see that based on our ERP US senders creating the requisition, we've sent off a approval request to user USR01, and we've even sent a notification message. And in fact, it's telling me that it's waiting in my inbox to be signed. So if we actually quickly pop over to Outlook and I run a quick sync up here, you'll see that I have two things, right? I have a direct reference to the request, who made it, etc., and all the detail, as well as I have hyperlinks to those specific steps within the approval process. Now, I'm actually going to come back and jump out of here and go right into the approval process. So here I'm actually going into the approval process under the specific requirements of around purchasing and purchasing signatures for purchase requests. So you'll see right here that there's the recipient to be signed. I can quickly go ahead and say, yep, I want to give them a valid, A-OK, so they've been approved for that. And I'm just going to send an acknowledgement. So it really isn't any more complicated than that. We tied a simple notification to the process so that there's notification. It can go back and forth. But now we're approved for that requisition to move forward in the process. Stay on page here. Okay, let's get out of here. So the next thing I want to do is I'm just going to go ahead and run MRP. And so when I run MRP, the system, as if you guys recall, running MRP is really like running a big calculator. And the most important thing about it is that the calculator provides the planning logic necessary to make or buy only what we need, and only what we need and when we need it. And it really, works to try to answer three key questions: what items are required, how many items are required, and when are the items required, right? So what items, how many, and when. And so when we run this process, it does go through several different functions. It looks to determine whether any manufacturing work order suggestions need to be made, any purchase order suggestions need to be made, whether any inter-site suggestions need to be made. Do I have enough of this particular carton in another location that I can maybe have too much? I can move some over here. Subcontract suggestions and so forth. So if we go ahead and log out of or leave MRP and make our way all the way to the purchase bench, remember we talked before that the purchase bench is really a decision-making support tool for planners and or purchasing folks, right? So in this particular case, the planning workbench for purchasing is helping me as a purchasing person or a planner/purchasing person to analyze what's going on either across many sites or within my specific site, which is today NA021, which is North American Food. For our purposes and to speed things up a little bit here, we know that we are working with our raw 316, right? And it's coming from our vendor NA055. So if we do a quick search, it says, hey, there's a suggestion here. Well, it's not a suggestion, it's a request, right? For some boxes to be ordered, right? And it came from our requisition. So it has a status of planned. It's our raw material. It's for the 115 that we asked for. If we scroll out here, you'll see that we have that it came from our request, and it is now sitting there because that is also within the sphere of MRP and in fact the workbench, right? So it's giving us the visibility to all of those requirements. So in this case, it's already checked. I'm going to generate that into a purchase order. So I have the ability now, as we move through the visual process map, we started with a request. That request got some approval. The approval was passed. We got the approval. We ran MRP. We recognized it was a requirement. The requirement was sent or represented in the purchasing workbench. We've gone into the purchasing workbench. We've seen that. If we had other items within the purchasing workbench for that vendor, we could have consolidated them all into a single purchase order with multiple lines. In this particular case, we're trying to flow this one item through, and you can see it created our purchase order for us. So the next move that we'll make on our process map here is to go to purchase orders. And again, within purchasing, our job is to buy things, right? And some of those are suggestions that were driven in from the planning tools that we use to make those decisions easier. But in essence, we're purchasing raw materials, we're purchasing services, we're purchasing subcontracting, so on, and so on. So in this particular case, we had our purchase order created right out of the purchasing workbench. So as we've done in the past, I'm going to come over to selection and I'm going to go to today. And right away, again, using the selection and the personalization that I can create within the advanced selection capabilities, I've quickly see our purchase order that we created. And obviously we have key things that we want to point out: payment terms, tax rule, the invoicing site, how are we getting it from the vendor, ground. If we get that in from the vendor when the arrival date is, so maybe we start scheduling what dock it's coming into. We can use a calendar for that, the arrival time and so forth. There is no signature management here, so we don't have to worry about that. You can have signature management on purchases, and many people do, but in this particular case, I do not. I do have my lines, and one thing I want to point out, at the information, we talked about integration, right? And we talked about cutting down mistakes and flowing information across the system. When you have disparate systems and manual systems, things can fall through the cracks. Things do become 1,150 instead of 115. So you can see that the information has flowed right over from our requisition all the way into the purchase order and so forth, the expected receipt date based on our 10 days and so on. And then also, if you scroll down a little bit here and we take a look at the action card on the line itself, we have insight into other critical areas that I may not always want access to as the purchasing agent, but I might need to have it when I need it, right? So every so often I might need it. So a couple of things you can do, reference budgets that might exist in the system already. Again, so we're just trying to make people smarter about our plan. The ability to add text. So if there's some comment that I want to share with my vendor, I can add a text line. I also have the ability to look at the line cost associated with this particular item. But probably most importantly, the one item I really wanted to point out, even though we have really nothing there yet, is this order line status. So each of the steps along our visual process map, we had this order line status option. So if I'm the person who created the requisition, if I'm the person who created the purchase order, and so on, I have the ability to sort of dive into a PO and reference this line order status so I get a quick update on what's going on. So let's go ahead and come back here to the purchase order. And what I want to do before I move on is I want to go into and print our this purchase order option, email purchase order to vendor. And so I'm going to go ahead and say print. And the great thing about this is, even though I'm driving it out as a report, this is one of those things that everybody asks in demos from big companies to little companies to medium companies. And that is, hey, in the system, is there a way for me to quickly, from the purchasing module, not printing a PDF and sending it out externally through email, but from the purchasing module, can I create an email, define who I want to get it, and personalize a message and attach that purchase order to it? So I sort of set this up. I'm going to say general supply, right? Just so we know that I changed it. I go ahead and say okay. And the system's actually gone and created that email for us. So let's get out of the purchase order. And like we did before, let's quickly jump over to Outlook, and let's go ahead and force a send receive. And lo and behold, there is that purchase order confirmation. So we've sent this to the vendor general supply from us, Don Rickles in the purchasing department, just to let them know. And here is the purchase order, right? So there is the document. And again, we're feeding more text, line item text, header and footer text. We can add that as we need to, but this is now flowing to the vendor. They may turn around and give us an acknowledgement. So the system does also help us manage acknowledgements to our purchase orders. I didn't get into that in too much detail, but that is something that we can talk about, especially if you've done a good discovery and the customer's told you that that's something they're interested in. So let's go ahead and minimize our email. And now, we've created the purchase order. Let's go ahead and actually receive it. And obviously, the function of receiving, whether we're doing it as a pre-receipt or as a receipt of just a simple order to our packaging guy, he's going to back up with a truck, or maybe FedEx LTL is coming in. The purpose is to receive in the goods. And so in this particular case, I'm going to go into receiving. And just like we did with our requisition, I'm going to go and create a new receipt. In this particular case, I'm going to give it my supplier, NAO 55. I'm going to give it in this case, just for additional information, supplier packaging slip information. So, right, so general supply company, I'm making this up, 012221-001, right? The date that we're receiving this in. And now if I come over to my order selection, right, and in that list, so we talked about draws in past, right? We are pulling that information from our purchase order into our receipt, and we're using the vendor as our sort of filter. So you can see here, if we open that up, is our raw 316, the 150 that we had the purchase order for. So let's go ahead and select that. As soon as we do, we get that line item automatically popping into our receipt. And a couple things that are important to point out here, as we scroll across, you can see there's the quantity. If we're doing a partial receipt or whatever, maybe they send us 120 or maybe they send us 110 or whatever it may be, we can define what that quantity is. Our default status that we're going to set this as we receive it into inventory. Where is it going to go? The location type, is it going into a freezer? Is it going out into a bulk storage location? No, it's going into a standard storage location and location stow 35. I do not have lot tracking on this particular item, but we can put in the supplier lot, and the lot will be generated automatically from the X3 perspective. And then, of course, as we come down here, you see the matching tolerance that we have set up, and then, of course, that it's a successful match. So, again, the key thing there is that checks and balances are in place to make sure that, we're not just blindly accepting things. Things aren't going crazy, right? We have rules in place to control the process. Our matching, whether we go to quality, whether we use lot control, all of that is what we're talking about when we talk about controlling and bringing some efficiency and repetitive nature to and predictableness to our procurement process. So let's go ahead and create that receipt. Let us go, and here by default, I can set this as a default. I forgot, so let's go and type in our label, Etique 01, and let's take a peek at that. So as we're receiving in our goods, we want to be able to put a label on the goods so that when we come to that stow location in the future, there's a nice little barcode on the raw materials or on the cartons on their skid, so that we can utilize that, right? So we have a nice barcode label here. And then let's go ahead and just quickly, you don't have to do this, but I just want you guys to see this. There are, crystal documents behind most of the business documents that take place within X3, whether that's the purchase order itself, an order acknowledgement, at a sales order, a quote letter at the quote. So in this particular case, I'm just going to print this to the screen quickly for you guys. And you can see the receipt information, and again, carrying that information forward. So I might have to have some record or bring this to the guy who's going to put it away or whatever it may be, but it's important to know that, all of those business documents are there in the background supporting these different business steps. So let's go ahead and close that out. And then lastly, I want, before we move into the sort of accounting or AP side of things, I want to point out that we can move a goods that have been received, into a quality procedure, right? This particular item was not quality controlled. It could be an optional. It could be done on a periodic basis. But in our case, I do want to recognize that that could be a step within the procurement process, because we may find that some of those goods aren't good. We want to communicate that to the vendor. They may be surprised, or maybe they're a repeat offender. We need to go into a potential non-conformance or just communication with them to address the problem. And we may need to send some items back so that's also part of it, right? So we want to make sure that we know that it's not good stuff. We're going to send it back as a return to the vendor and maybe get a credit memo in place. So that might happen after we go through the payment process. So let's quickly go through that payment process. Let's go ahead into the supplier invoice, right? So we got the invoice from the vendor. Now we're going to process that within our system and eventually get them paid, right? So I'm going to go ahead and create a new purchase invoice. Site comes in by default. The invoice type I want to create is a purchase invoice. It defaults to today. The vendor is NAO55, right? General Supply Company. Let's go ahead and put in their supplier doc again, right? So General Supply Company dash 012221 dash 001. And so as soon as we're putting the information in, very much like we saw with the receipt, we actually can reference over to our left list. We can look at our receipt selection, and lo and behold, on the 22nd, there you go, with NAO55. We can blow that up a little bit here and scroll over, right? And ready to be invoiced, right, is the 115. So let's go ahead and grab that. And again, it's dropping that into our line. The total that we're going to invoice is that 140.30. So if we come back up to where am I here? Control, sorry, down 140.30. Sorry. There's the invoice minus tax amount, and we go ahead and we say, yep, that is what we want. We absolutely can do the three-way match here, but as we've been moving through the process, we've seen that match has met its requirements, but you do have the ability to go in and look at that. Let's go back and go ahead and hit post. Yep, this is just letting me know it's going to no longer be available to me. So it says, sure, I've created the document. And now if I go and print that, let's print it. And let's throw it to our screen. There's our invoice control form. This is really just showing us the invoice has been created. It's flowing into the AP process. And at this point, let's go ahead again. Just want you guys to know those documents are in the background there. They're part of the system. They're there. They can be modified using Crystal, copied and modified if needed. Let's go ahead now, and we really have two options at this point. Open items, we can use the payment proposal to kind of automatically go through and look for those open items that need to be dealt with, create the basically automatically create the posting invoice payments, and then we have the ability to process those. But what I want to do today is actually want to dive through to supplier payment and actually do one from scratch. So we're going to go ahead. We're doing an automatic check issue. So I'm going to create, again, a new record. The system wants to know, again, who's your business partner or your supplier. In this case, it's NAO55. Give it a description. Payment for packaging, right? My bank is NA2US. And my BP amount, well, let's go back to open items, right? And there is the open item for our order, our original, actually going all the way back to our request for 140.30. So the BP amount is 140.30. And the check number will be assigned automatically based on a sequence number template. And so I'm going to go ahead and say OK and create that check. And then let's go ahead and what did I do wrong? Oh, sorry. I got it. You got to print the check, Dave. It's a Friday, guys. I apologize. Another thing that's important to understand, this check that's going to come up, it's going to look kind of sparse. Well, that's because it was designed to run on pre-printed checks. So there you can see is the amount. let's go ahead and close out of there, and let's post that payment. And it's saying, hey, what's the date? What's the value date? And oops, I'm going to say, let's just go with today. All right, now let's go on and go back to our visual process map. And really the last thing I want you guys to think about is, and we've talked about this before, but we've just gone through a multi-step process. And that process along the way, whether I'm using that line status or something that's more powerful called journal traceability, that is a strong feature that X3 has. I've recorded along the way all the different transactions, right? The journal traceability builds up as we move through the process. And really the concept or journal traceability is used to view the log of all the different of a purchase journal. And it gives us visibility to both the upstream transactions from where we look at it. So if I'm here at a purchase order, I have visibility upstream all the way to purchase request, or downstream to payment. Payment proposal, but really supplier payment. So let's circle back to purchase request, where we started this, right? And remember, we had our it's already closed, right? So we've gone through the process. But remember, we had our product. And if we go to that product and do purchase journal traceability, and let's just make sure we have all our items expanded, we have visibility to all of the different steps, if you will, just to keep it at a very sort of layman's terms level. These are the different business processes we've gone through, from the purchase request to the purchase order to the purchase receipt, invoice, right? The journal transaction, the waiting for the open item, waiting for payment, get it, and then generating the check and sending the payment to the vendor. So we see visibility from a part status perspective, and then we also have the detailed transactions here available to access if we need to. So it's really critical to understand that not only are we tying everything together, right? Not only are we improving that process, reducing errors, removing steps, so on, making sure that we are not getting maverick spend, have tie-ins to open purchase orders, RFQs, purchase requests, and so forth. We have visibility to all of those steps through that traceability, even 2 months down the road, right? So we never lose that full view and that full integration perspective that X3 gives us. And I think getting that information and having all that data there and having it organized allows us to present that information, right? Again, going back to SEI and SDNA, through business intelligence or reporting, we have the ability to see that, and we can start developing strategies that allow us to look into discounting opportunities, maybe decide to venture across and buy things from overseas or in bigger bulk, and also optimize working capital, right? So be more efficient about when we're spending money, how much we're spending. Don't tie up cash in inventory, because we have better insights now as to what we need to purchase and when. So just to summarize and bring it to a close here, some of what I just said is really tied to that integrated end-to-end procure-to-pay business process, right? Make things simple, efficient, and automated. We talked about using the single centralized system of record, right? So standardization, governance, regulations, making sure that everybody's using the tools that are available, right? And by doing that, we're sharing that data across and reducing, multiple entry, as well as we're putting some management or controls in place to make sure that there is none of that maverick spend. We're also streamlining the process, right? Not just making a visual process map about it, but we're also streamlining the processes and reducing costs, right? And again, that's all tied into that approval process. So again, we know the right people are buying what they should be buying and buying the right amounts of it. And then add in those powerful business intelligence tools, and we're refining the information so that we're making improved decision making, which makes us more competitive in today's global economy. So I think that's really what it's all about: is looking at ourselves in the mirror, reducing our manual steps that take so much time, make our employees less productive, create errors and misinformation that waste money, so on and so forth, right through to managing our cash, to controlling when we pay, to having the controls to negotiate better with our vendors, all the while improving our relationship with our customer, because we really improve the process, and they can be more reliable. We can be more reliable to them because we have controls over the resources that matter to the products that we deliver to them. So hope this was enjoyable. Hope you liked it. I appreciate you guys taking the time to watch the demo, and talk to you soon.